Hare Krishna. Jolly Mataji has joined us too. How nice.
Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu,
Yes,
I request on the chat. I just wonder whether it's possible to do it in a like the way we do in the chat group, in the what's that called, YouTube form? Is it possible? The last time it was so.
Okay, I'll speak to Mayank Prabhu to see how we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much.
So it's now 2 minutes past 6. We try as far as possible to start promptly. So we'd like to start today. So a very warm welcome to everyone to our Nectar of Devotion series. I think we've been going now about 4 weeks since we started the Nectar of Devotion. This is a truly wonderful book to discuss and to study and to relish. And it's a very important book in the path of Krishna consciousness. Can I ask you all, how many of you have studied Nectar Devotion previously? If you could just raise your hand. You can raise your hand by reactions. Okay, Divya Gaurangi Mataji studied. Nimisha Mataji studied. Palika Mataji has studied. Pramod Prabhu has studied it before. All right, that gives me an idea. You know, we have a mixed audience here. Some who have maybe not studied, some who have studied maybe once or twice. Rasalila Srimati Mataji has also studied. So wonderful. So I'll just start off by, oh, but forgotten. Yeah, Divya Gauragi Mataji, we all have this tendency. So yeah, maybe before we do a recap, we'll start off with the invocation, and then we can do a recap, and then we'll get into today's session. Today's session is essentially going to be completing chapter number 1, which is entitled the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. And then we will go into chapter number 2, which is called Sadhana Bhakti, which describes devotional service and practice. And that's particularly important to us. Srila Prabhupada calls it very nicely the first stages of devotion. So we will do that. But before we do, we always start by reciting the one verse from the Sat Goswami Astakam. We always try to, because we glorify Srila Rupa Goswami first, and then we'll do the Mangala Charanam prayers. Nana Shastra Vicharanai Kanipano Sadharma Samstapako Lokanamita Karino Tribhuvane Manya Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugo Sri Jiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all of the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Shri Sri Sat Goswami Astaka Srinivasacharya verse 2. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashri Gaurabha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Pastacha Dishatarine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So just a very quick refresh. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Bhakti, we know, is pure devotional service. Rasa means transcendental taste or mellow, and Sindhu is ocean. So this book we're studying is an ocean of devotion, and it is broken up into various sections. Purva Vibhaga, Dakshina Vibhaga, Paschima Vibhaga, Uttara Vibhaga. We're only studying the first 19 chapters in our course. And the first 19 chapters are broken up into various sections. Samanya Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. Samanya Bhakti means is a general description, and that's covered in the introduction in chapter 1. Then Sadhana Bhakti is devotional service in practice, and that's chapters 2 to 16. Bhava Bhakti is devotional service in ecstasy, chapter 17 to 18. And Prema Bhakti, which is pure love of God, is chapter 19. Thus far, we have done the introduction, and we've covered about 60% of chapter 1. So in the introduction, we covered something very important. Who can remember what was the most important aspect of the introduction that we covered? Srila Prabhupada starts is translation or summary study of the Nectar devotion in the introduction itself. Anyone remember what was the most important part of the introduction?
Prabhuji, just top of my memory, was it Anyabhilashita Shunyam verse?
Yes. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, we are going to be discussing bhakti in this book, right? So to discuss bhakti, we first need to understand what is bhakti. And he gives this definition of bhakti, which is a most beautiful definition. And this is called the Paribhasa Sutra of the entire book. That means the seed, the nutshell verse of this entire book. It is a most important verse. And in this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami is describing the definition of bhakti. And he says this definition as intrinsic qualities, Swarup Lakshana, and then it got secondary qualities, which is called Tatastha Lakshana, or marginal qualities. And he said bhakti has to have some intrinsic qualities. Firstly, it has to be about Krishna. If it's not to do about Krishna, then it's not bhakti. And then Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada explains that what do we mean by Krishna? Krishna means two-armed, threefold bending form Krishna, plus his expansions, and his expansions of the expansions, his paraphernalia, his name, his abode, his devotees. So very broad definition of what is Krishna. And so firstly, bhakti has to be dedicated to Krishna. If it's not to Krishna, if it's to Lord Shiva, it doesn't qualify to be. Well, Lord Shiva is, maybe that's not the right example. Maybe Lord Indra, that's not bhakti, because Lord Shiva is great devotee. He would fall if one is worshipping. Secondly, is anushilanam. It must be something active. It must be a cultivation. It can't just be something silent. It has to be active service. Third, the mood has got to be favorable. We can be doing service, we can be doing to Krishna, but there has to be a favorable mood. And one last aspect, it can be to Krishna, it could be active, it could be favorable. But if it's not as Krishna desires it to be, it cannot be bhakti. So we got a very nice definition here. And then secondary is anya bilashita shunyam. Means shunyam means zero. All other zeros, all other desires must be made zero. Now, when I heard about this definition, I've been studying this verse for many, many years. And one day it dawned upon me how beautiful this anya bilashita shunyam, jnana, karma, adi. What desires need to be made zero? The desire for fruit of result, the desire for liberation, the desire for mystic perfection. In other words, it means all hostility towards Krishna must be made zero. Because as long as one's got some desire that's separate from pleasing Krishna, it means there is some hostility. That means, why should everything be for Krishna? There should be something for me. There should be something for me. And there's this lack of faith that simply by serving Krishna, we will attain all success in life. So we've got to make all hostility zero. And when one has, even if it is not completely zero, at least the desire to make it zero. So we covered this beautiful definition of devotional service. So after Srila Rupa Goswami has done that, explain what is bhakti, he then goes on to explain the greatness of bhakti. It's just like when you understand that something is the greatness of some asset, then our appreciation, how we value it, how we treasure it, increases. And then we have gratitude. And when we have gratitude, then we move forward very nicely. So then Srila Rupa Goswami goes in the first chapter to describe the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. What makes devotional service so great, greater than anything else? And then he goes on to systematically explain through 6 characteristics why nothing, no process, no activity can come anywhere close to pure devotional service. And the 6 characteristics he lists are Kleshagni, Shubhada, Sandrananda Visheshatma, Sudurlabha, Moksha Lagrutakrit, and Sri Krishna Karshini. So Kleshagni was the first one we discussed, means pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Immediate relief. And then Srila Rupa Goswami analyzes what is the cause of distress. Why do we experience distress? And he gives 3 reasons why we experience distress. Can anyone remember which of the 3 reasons Srila Rupa Goswami gives why we experience distress? Anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, is it because we identify with the material body?
That's true. And what term, what's the Sanskrit term for that? The Sanskrit term is avidya, ignorance.
Yeah.
We ignorant. We are not this body, but we think we are this body. So he says avidya, ignorance of our spiritual identity. That's the first reason we study, we suffer. What's the second reason he gives why we suffer?
Prabhuji, was it material desires and sinful activities? Bijam?
Yes, 2 things. One is papam, which is sinful, the results of our sinful activities, reactions. And then bijam, he says material desires. Just like, if we didn't have all of these material desires, we would be very peaceful. We can sit and chant 24 hours. And we could just relish this chanting of the holy name. But because there's so many material desires, the moment we pick up our beads, it becomes like turmoil. Even we want to do devotional service, we're doing the puja for Krishna, we're singing for Krishna, we're cooking for Krishna, we're reading about Krishna, to focus the mind on Krishna. It's not an easy thing for us because of material desires. And then the third one is sins. There are many types of sin. One are sins from our previous life that are still in seed form. The seed hasn't even sprouted. Then there's sins that are sprouting. And as they're sprouting, they create a certain tendency in us. And lastly, the ones that have sprouted and are fructifying. So all of these, our sins, our desires, our ignorance, we suffer. And Srila Rupa Goswami goes on to provide evidence how even in the very initial stages of bhakti, devotional service is so powerful, it can address all 3. It's the only process. It's the only process. And then we said the second qualities was Shubhada, pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. And we said, for something to be deemed to be truly auspicious, it has to meet 3 criteria. And you can see on my slides there, what is the 3 criteria? Firstly, it needs to be benefiting everyone. To be all auspicious, if it doesn't benefit everyone, and we go so far to say everyone, not only the human beings, but all living entities. Secondly, it needs to attract. That means we feel an attraction for it. And lastly, it should produce all good qualities. 3 such important criteria: benefit everyone, attract everyone, produce all good qualities. And then citing various evidences from the Shastra, Srila Rupa Goswami goes on to beautifully describe how pure devotional service is all auspicious. And The idea here is when you read at least the first two, there's an English saying, it's a no-brainer. If you just do a comparative study, by following this path, this process, these are the results you get compared to other paths and other process. Even by these first two characteristics, we can say, yes, go for it. There's nothing better than pure devotional service. The third one we described was how pure devotional service brings one to the platform of transcendental happiness. And then we explained that there are three types of happiness. Happiness that comes from sense gratification. Happiness comes from liberation and Brahman realization. And that happiness which comes from pure devotional service. And we described and we cited evidence how, compared to pure devotional service, the happiness that comes from sense gratification is insignificant. For Brahman, the happiness that comes from Brahman realization and liberation, completely insignificant. And then pure devotional service, when you're in that platform, it's like completely off the radar. When one is experiencing pure devotional service, no amount of sense gratification can distract one. No temptation of liberation. And we describe how liberation personified, she's sitting at the feet of the devotee begging, because liberation is so insignificant. So there we've gone to see how pure devotional service. And then today we will discuss a bit more about the fourth quality, characteristics, and that is Sudurlabha. Sudurlabha means rare. So pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Rarely achieved. And Srila Rupa Goswami, he quotes one verse to explain. He gives two reasons in this verse why pure devotional service is so rarely achieved. Sada na ugai anasangai alabhya suchirad api harina chasu adiyeti vidrasasyad sudurlabha. Devotional perfection is very difficult to attain for two reasons. First, unless one is attached to Krishna, he cannot attain devotional perfection, even if he renders devotional service for a long time. Second, Krishna does not easily deliver perfection in devotional service. So Sudurlabha, very rarely achieved. And the first reason, very rarely achieved, meaning that one can perform sadhana bhakti, or one can perform sadhana bhakti for a long, long time. But unless one develops attachment to Krishna, we will never get pure devotional service. And the pure devotional service in this context is a bhava bhakti. Bhava bhakti. And secondly, Krishna does not deliver perfection in pure devotional service. And Srila Rupa Goswami quotes one verse from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Shukadev Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit that Krishna readily grants liberation, but does not very readily grant perfection in devotional service. it means that Krishna wants to see that a devotee is actually sincere and serious, and that he does not have ulterior motives. If this is the case, devotional service can very easily be successful. Otherwise, it is very difficult to obtain from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not a cheap thing, pure devotional service, especially Bhava Bhakti. And it's not very easily granted. Krishna wants to see that we are very, very eager to have it. And we shall describe a bit later how this eagerness comes. So again, there's a description about the two reasons why it's so difficult. And it's described in another perspective here. The first is you cannot get pure devotional service by one's own efforts. We can try on our own. It's very, very difficult. And Prabhupada and Srila Rupa Goswami cite some evidence to say, but if we get the mercy of the devotees, and particularly the spiritual master, then it becomes easy. And we know that from the Krishna book, that there's the example of Mother Yashoda. She wanted to bind baby Krishna, and she got so much of the rope, and no matter how much she tried, it was always 2 fingers short. And we know that the 2 fingers represent our efforts and the mercy of Krishna. It's not that we simply wait for the mercy of Krishna without putting the effort. We have to put in some effort, and Krishna's mercy comes in the form of the spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada, in one of the paragraphs in this chapter, he explains that devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19.151, he said, by the mercy of the spiritual master who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. So the general mood of one who is practicing devotional service is that I am totally without any qualifications. I am simply a beggar. I am just begging for mercy that I can get this devotional service. If one has some confidence in one's own abilities, one is of the opinion in the consciousness that I can achieve it, then it becomes very, very difficult. That's why it's so rare. One has to come to the point of complete humility. So I've been speaking a lot here, and I'm not sure if you all are getting bored, or your mind is wandering. Are there any reflections or questions or comments about what's been discussed so far in today's session? Does it make sense? Can you relate to what's being said and discussed?
Yes, Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu, thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Remembering when we studied. Thank you.
Good, good. It's all coming back now. Are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
So I don't know whether it was this chapter or somewhere else I read. It said something about devotional service brings us under Devi Prakriti, i.e. Radha, who is the internal energy of the Lord. I couldn't understand that. Is it related to here or somewhere else?
Somewhere else. Somewhere else.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we can discuss here. But anyway, since you mentioned Srimati Radharani, Prabhupada cites the example of Srimati Radharani. And in one lecture, Srila Prabhupada says, she is so exalted in a loving attitude towards Krishna that he is always ready to do whatever she asks. But at the same time, she's so humble and appreciative of other devotees, seeing them as better than her, even if they're not advanced, that she will immediately recommend them to Krishna and he will accept. So basically, the point Prabhupada is making that you know, we cannot get Krishna's mercy. But if it's recommended, I remember I was reading once a very nice extract from Satsvarup Goswami Maharaj. So Satsvarup Maharaj imagines himself now, he's died. And he's standing outside the doors of Goloka Vrindavan. And then someone comes and meets him. So Krishna goes and says, who's at the door? And someone goes and says, who's at the door? And then he says, it's Satsvarup Das. Oh, Satsvarup Das? And then they go to Krishna and they say, Krishna, it's Satsvarup Das. And then Srila Prabhupada, and then Krishna is thinking, Satsvarup Das. And then Prabhupada is standing there. And then Prabhupada says, oh, Satsvarup Das. My Satsvarup? Yes, yes, yes. Bring him in. And when Krishna hears the Srila Prabhupada recommendation, and Krishna becomes very enthusiastic. He says, yes, yes, bring him in, bring him in, bring him in. So that's, in one sense, that's our attitude. You know, that my spiritual master, the Vaishnavas, they are very, very dear to Krishna. And whatever they recommend to Krishna, Krishna is ever ready to accept and embrace. Not only accept, embrace. So even if through some circumstance we haven't, fully pleased Krishna, attracted Krishna's attention, but if we've pleased the devotee of Krishna, we've attracted the attention of the devotee of Krishna, they will, as they say, put in a very good word for us. They will put a very good word for us. And then Krishna will readily accept and embrace us into his entourage and his company. Once Srila Prabhupada told the devotee, he says, I have the key to the back door of Goloka Vrindavan. He says, he had the key to the back door. Sometimes you can't get into the front door. There's lots of restrictions and hoops and qualifications, but somehow the other, got a contact. They take you to the alleyway and you got the key to the back door, they let you in and you get in. So the mercy of the spiritual master, the mercy of the pure Vaishnavas, it's very, very important. Therefore, the devotees who know the secret of devotional service, understanding their own frailties, their own shortcomings, they try very hard to please the Guru and the pure Vaishnavas. They almost dedicate their lives towards this mission. That, let me please my spiritual master. In fact, I remember once I was in Los Angeles And I was traveling with my Guru Maharaj, and we were at New Dwaraka temple. And while I was there, I was the person was serving my Guru Maharaj. And I met one disciple of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. His name is Balaram Das. He was a very, very intimate associate of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And he called me and he was talking to me. And then he told me, he said, Vrindavan Chandra, I want to tell you something. He said, your Guru Maharaj, Giriraj Maharaj, he is your deity. He is your Krishna. You worship him like your deity. You serve him like your Krishna. And you will attain all success in spiritual life. And his words have stuck with me, since that day. That, Krishna, he is more pleased when his devotee is served. So when we have this attitude, and they are much more accessible, the Guru, the pure Vaishnavas, they're much more accessible to us. And we could please them by various services. So this is one thing. And then the second part about Krishna not being very eager to give devotion. That Krishna becomes purchased. And we'll discuss a bit more in later chapters of how Krishna, he bestows his Samvit and Ladini Shakti on the devotee and how he becomes so attractive. And we'll discuss that also in the next qualities. So before we go on to the next quality, anyone's got any points or questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Sister Nisha here.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I want to ask from the 6 characteristics that we are going through at the moment.
Yes.
These first 2, Kleshagni and Subhada, is like sadhana bhakti, isn't it? Where we are more like sadhana, the process we go through.
Yes.
And then the next 2, Moksha, Lagutkrata, and Sudulabha,
Yes.
is a bhava bhakti.
Yes.
And next 2, where it comes Sundarananda Visheshatma and Shri Krishna Akarshini,
Yes.
that into Prema Bhakti.
Yes.
So we understand that we obviously, you've already mentioned that one should not desire for mukti and bhukti, just the bhakti. But in the process of going to the Prema Bhakti stage, that's what devotees would aspire for. But what does Krishna like? Because it feels like the 3rd and the 4th stage of Bhava Bhakti is the most hard work done. So does Krishna enjoy the Bhava Bhakti more, or he's more happier to give a Prema Bhakti?
Well, we'll study later on what is Bhava Bhakti and what is Prema Bhakti. And Srila Rupa Goswami, he gives a very nice metaphor to explain. He says Bhava Bhakti is and then even when we study, you can see we do chapter 17 and 18 is Bhava Bhakti and chapter 19 is Prema Bhakti. Chapter 19 is very short. And basically the crux of chapter 19 is, it is just an intensification of Bhava Bhakti. Bhava Bhakti is the first rays of the sun of Prema. And when sometimes when you go in the morning, you'll see the sun that's coming out, first rays are coming out. That's Bhava Bhakti. And then Prema Bhakti is. Obviously, the full manifestation of Bhakti is at the stage of Prema Bhakti. Prema. And, Krishna, but there are many stages above Prema also. There is simple Prema, and then there's 6 stages above Prema Bhakti also. And the highest stage is the stage of Mahabhav, which is Srimati Radharani. But coming back to your question, Krishna is pleased by all stages of Bhakti, but the more intense it is, that means Prema Bhakti is more pleasing to Krishna. Does that answer your question, Mataji, or you are looking for something else?
No, that's not like Bhava Bhakti is very, very difficult to get, because there where
Yes.
Krishna, he does not give it easily. He would check you out, and even a drop of bliss like feels like an ocean, So that's
Yeah.
where actually checking you out, because I've also read in Bhakti Rasami Sindhu that Krishna actually becomes puppet of the devotee at that point.
Yes, true.
Really
So,
made about
yeah,
it, but
what happens? We will discuss it, but I'll very, very briefly describe it, and we'll repeat it later on.
okay, Prabhu.
So Krishna has three potencies: the Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini. Sandini is the aspect of eternality. Samvit is knowledge, and Ladini is the pleasure potency. So when Krishna notices a particular intensity in a devotee to want him, or in a particular way he is pleased, he's pure devotee, then Krishna bestows what is called Kripa Shakti. Kripa Shakti is the combination of the Samvit and the Ladini Shakti, right? So when Krishna notices this, then Krishna benedicts that devotee with these two potencies, Samvit and Ladini. Now, when one gets benedicted with the Samvit potency, then there is like a complete eruption of knowledge of Krishna. Just like now, we have knowledge of Krishna, is Sachidananda Vigraha, and so much, but it's all very theoretical, that knowledge. It's not like really understood. But when Krishna, he bestows us with the Samvit potency, that Samvit potency is a complete revelation bestowed upon us about who Krishna really is. And when we get benedicted with that, Krishna becomes so attractive to us, because we're getting an understanding of who Krishna is. And then Krishna, by infusing us with the Ladini, the pleasure potency, he himself becomes very attracted to the devotee, very attracted to the devotee. So essentially, the stage of bhava is when one gets benedicted, one receives this Kripa Shakti. This Kripa Shakti. And it is, as you said, when Krishna bestows us with this Kripa Shakti, then he becomes sold out. As you said, he becomes a puppet to the hands of a pure devotee. So when we did this discussion, what becomes very apparent, that this whole process of bhakti, it's less about us, becoming very qualified. It's really about us becoming a recipient, the right recipient. And I mentioned this to you previously. Once I was sitting next to Pankajangri Prabhu, and I was taking breakfast with him at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And by the way, many of y'all know that Pankajangri Prabhu is in a very critical stage with his health at COVID at the moment. So whatever prayers you can offer for Pankajangri Prabhu, although he's in Krishna's hands, please do pray to Krishna that he may be benedicted. So I asked him the question, and he said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came and he was freely giving Krishna prem. Yeah. And we know this verse is saying it's Sudurlabha. He was freely giving Krishna prem. So I asked him, if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and was freely giving this Krishna prem in this Kali Yuga, why does it seem so difficult for us to get this Krishna prem? It was a question that's been on my mind for a long time. So when I had this opportunity to ask someone like Pankajangri Prabhu, I took the opportunity. So I said, if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to freely give this Krishna prem, why didn't we just get it freely? Why does it seem like we have to work so hard? Then he gave me an example. He said in India, there is something called the milk of the lioness. He said sometimes a lioness, you can get milk. But he said that that milk of the lioness is so powerful. If you don't have the right container, you just put the milk there, the container will completely disintegrate. He said you need the right type of container to contain the milk of a lioness. So in the same way, he said, yes, Krishna may be ready to give you Krishna Prem, but you may not be able to hold it. So bhakti is about us becoming the right container, one in another sense. To become the right container that when the Krishna Prem is ready to be bestowed upon us, we can hold it. A long answer, but hopefully that explains an important point.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I
Hare
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So just first wanted to share, I just remembered something you mentioned, His Grace Pankajangri Prabhuji. And once I had just come to temple Bhaktivedanta Manor in the car park, I had this service. So I parked my car and Prabhuji was walking, chanting. He had come to London at that time. So this was before COVID. And so he stopped to speak to me as I got out of the car, so humble. And then we started talking. And first thing he said is that, Mataji, can I ask you, your car's color is blue. And have you chosen this car? Because this is such a particular blue. It's like Krishna's feather blue color. Did you choose it because of that? And I thought how a devotee always connects everything with Krishna. How he was just, his complete mind, the mentality, his thinking, everything was related to Krishna. So I said, yes, Prabhuji, I chose this, but I did not think in that sense. But now I feel my car has become a Maha because you have connected it to Krishna's feather peacock. But yeah, so while I was praying for Prabhuji today, I was just remembering that. And secondly, the question I had, Prabhuji, was the mercy and blessings. You said that how it is so important to have the blessings of spiritual master, Vaishnavas. So, and they are so kind devotees. They always bless us. So that's a real benediction. But is there a difference between mercy and blessings, or is it same thing? When devotees or our guru blesses us, is mercy and blessing same? Because many times when we read Bhagavad Gita and scriptures, mercy is mentioned more, I think. So
Yeah, I take blessing to be okay. You receive something, but it's going to take some time to manifest. Whereas like mercy is like, you just get like the whole cloud just bursting on you, So that's my simple understanding. I see there's a slight difference in blessings and mercy, but sometimes it can be synonymous. I feel because mercy is kripa, doya, that we. Well, what is the word, Sanskrit word for blessing?
Ashirvad.
Ashirvad.
Sorry,
Ashirvad. Ashirvad. No.
Ashirvad.
Blessing is actually.
Okay. So there seems to be, even just by the Sanskrit, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but if you speak to some Sanskrit scholar, maybe they would, because Sanskrit is very much based on root meanings, isn't it? The words have root meanings. So it would be interesting to ask a Sanskrit scholar, maybe someone like Karti Chapter1.
I liked your definition though, Prabhuji. Have you said that daya is like a cloud, it just pours on you. So it sounds more like something very unconditional, something just comes and then it just flows on you, And then blessing is something that happens, maybe a little bit of condition when we really please someone, they are really happy with our service, a pure happiness, like nothing selfish there. but they are
Yeah.
just happy with your service. But daya is maybe unconditional. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm just thinking after hearing you, it is more revealing to me. Maybe.
Yeah. I was thinking of one incident, once Srila Prabhupada was in India, and one Indian gentleman came there. And he was saying, "Oh, Swamiji, please give me your blessing. Please give me your blessing. Please give me your blessing." And Prabhupada said, my blessing is already there. You just have to grab it. And Prabhupada says, you are in a well, right? And you can't get out. Someone throws you a rope. And at some point in time, you have to grab the rope, and then you get pulled out. Prabhupada said, it's there, my blessings are there. Because mercy almost is like something more unconditional. You just get flooded, and there's not much effort really. No effort. You just get benedicted with it, by the mercy of the spiritual master.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Amazing.
My understanding is, sorry, you finish. My understanding would be, I don't know if I'm right, but blessings is a kind of a process. It doesn't materialize straight away. And so and it's up to you to receive it in a blissful way.
Yes.
And then the other one would be an immediate like a magical shall I say gift from probably God, mostly God. You hear mercy coming from, isn't it? I don't know about a guru giving you mercy. Is that right?
Yeah, Guru does. In our tradition, it's very much about Guru.
Yeah, it's kind of an immediate effect.
Yes.
So it's your mercy has been bestowed on you, so you don't, it doesn't wait till you receive it or not.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that was what my mind was moving in that direction.
Hare Krishna, yeah.
You're thinking along the same lines. Thank you for that, Jolly Man.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna. All right, so let's quickly, I'd like to finish chapter 1 today. So we'll just move to the last two qualities. Moksha Lagrutakrit means those in pure devotional service deride even the concept of liberation. Liberation, everyone is seeking after moksha, after liberation. But for one who is situated in pure devotional service at the stage of prema bhakti, liberation is insignificant. And Srila Rupa Goswami says that if Brahmanda, or the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied 1 trillion-fold, it still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. That means, Srila Rupa Goswami is trying to give us some perspective here. Okay, you get some happiness from liberation. But if you do a comparative study, what you get from pure devotional service, you multiply it 1 trillion-fold, trillion times, and still liberation doesn't even feel like an atomic fraction. So this is some perspective is given because, it's just incomparable. You can't compare it. So this is what Srila Rupa Goswami says, and only one on the stage of prema bhakti, will have some conception of what this means. And then the last characteristics is pure devotional service, Sri Krishna Karshini. Pure devotional service attracts even Krishna. And Srila Rupa Goswami quotes a few verses. There are many instances when this principle is shown. You will see in the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada is stressing how Srimati Radharani is the greatest devotee, and Krishna is completely controlled by her. And ultimately, all devotional service is performed under her protection. And then there's the example once that Krishna was so bewildered by Srimati Radharani that he was trying to milk a bull instead of a cow. And then lastly, Srila Prabhupada talks about Krishna is known as Madan Mohan. Madan is Cupid. Once Madan was looking at Krishna in the rasa dance, and he was trying to shoot his arrow on Krishna because Madan's arrow completely bewilders everybody. And he was trying to shoot Krishna, and then every time he was trying to focus on Krishna, Krishna was moving. And as he was doing that, he became so bewildered by Krishna's beauty that he dropped his bow and arrow. Therefore, Krishna is known as Madan Mohan, that one who attracts Cupid. The whole world is being attracted by Cupid, but Krishna attracts Cupid. But Srimati Radharani, she is known as Madan Mohan Mohini. That means she is the attractor of the attractor of Cupid. Because she is the highest embodiment of pure devotional service, Srimati Radharani. And Krishna becomes completely attracted by her. Therefore, sometimes we read Srimati Radharani's name is Madan Mohan Mohini. And Krishna's name is sometimes Madan Mohan. So that is some examples. So that essentially concludes chapter number 1, the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. And the next chapter is entitled First Stages of Devotion. And that has to deal all with sadhana bhakti, devotional service in practice. That's very, very relevant for us because we are known as sadhakas. Sadhakas means practicing devotees. We've not become seasoned devotees. We're practicing. And there's a whole science from chapters number 2 all the way to chapter number 16 of the Eastern wave is dedicated towards sadhana bhakti. And for the next how many weeks, until we finish chapter number 16, we'll be focusing on sadhana bhakti. And we will talk about 2 types of sadhana bhakti. What is the definition of sadhana bhakti? How does one practice sadhana bhakti? What are the positive injunctions? What are the negative prohibitions? What are the 3 prerequisites for sadhana bhakti? What are the 64 items of sadhana bhakti? What are the 5 most potent forms of sadhana bhakti? That will be the subject of our discussion for the forthcoming weeks. And it's now 6:58. I think I'll stop here. And if anyone's got any questions or comments, we can address them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Dandava Pranam Chandrika Mataji.
Prabhuji, you mentioned Madan Mohan Prabhu. Sorry, Madan Mohan.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks us who is Madan Mohan, we would say basically when Cupid approached him, he dropped his arrows. And so how would you, put that in a easier phrase?
Okay, someone asks you, who is Madan Mohan?
Yeah.
You'll say Madan Mohan is Krishna. So they'll ask you, why has he got the name Madan Mohan?
Yeah.
Then you would say Madan means Cupid and Mohan means attractor. And then you can tell them the story how once everyone in this world is becoming attracted by Cupid. He's shooting his arrows everywhere and people becoming completely bewildered. But that same Cupid, he once tried to shoot Krishna, but he couldn't. He dropped his, therefore Krishna is known as Madan Mohan. You can explain like that.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, and then we're really looking forward to hearing about Baba Bhakti because You mentioned liberation is easily granted, but that devotional service is very rare. And at Bhava and Prema, that's where you actually relish the nectar. So liberation happens obviously much earlier when you're free of desires, free of sinful activities, and that's putting us on a platform to achieve Bhava Bhakti. I'm just reflecting in my mind. So liberation is much easily granted.
Yeah. Krishna will grant liberation very easily.
Okay.
He will grant it's, much of the Vedas is about how you can get moksha, liberation. There are so many prescribed methods. What is the most difficult thing to do is to surrender with complete humility. You can do many rituals, you can perform many yoga asanas, you can read many books. Although it's difficult and it also requires effort. But the biggest effort, the greatest effort, is to concede the ego, to become humble, to surrender to Krishna, and to see oneself as the servant of the Krishna. That's the real hard work. But by the mercy of Krishna and Guru, that ego can be very easily dismantled, also.
Okay. We have to rely on the mercy.
Very much so. We are mercy cases. We are
mercy cases.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
This is my first time listening. I haven't attended previous classes, so I'm completely amateur. So I just wanted to ask you, isn't surrendering to Krishna much easier than surrendering to anybody else in this world? Because it's so difficult to surrender to any human being or anybody, because surrendering to Krishna is so natural, I feel.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Krishna is so attractive. Krishna is so merciful. We know that one verse in the Bhagavatam, Ho Baki, where Uddhava says, where can I find anyone as merciful as Krishna, who gave the position of mother to Putana in the spiritual world. And Uddhava is just that same verse was also repeated when they were trying to capture Sukadev Goswami when he ran away. So in one sense, yes, we're trying to find the ideal person to surrender to, because we have had so many disappointments in so many previous lives, and even in this life, we've experienced so many. We've tried to surrender to so many causes, to so many people, and then we hear about Krishna. We surrender. So, why is it so difficult to surrender to Krishna? I'd like to ask myself that question. Why can't I give myself absolutely and completely to Krishna? It is my anarthas. It is our anarthas, Rupa Mataji, that prevents us. The anarthas that arise. There's many causes of anarthas, and that's another completely different topic. But although Krishna is so worthy of surrender, it's our anarthas that hold us back.
No, I'm saying that it is much easier to surrender to Krishna, I feel. It is very difficult. Yes. It is very difficult, at least for me, to surrender to anybody in this world than to surrender to Krishna, because the story of the story of Indra. But I'm saying that I feel like when I was a worm in the stool, Krishna was there with me. So who will be like that? When I'm in the most disgusting place, even there Krishna is with me. So who in this world will be with me when I'm in a very disgusting place? Nobody. So it's only Krishna who is when we are in a very abominable condition, say if we are hospitalized or whatever, in a very, very abominable condition, when people will, nobody will be there. Krishna is still there. So, it is very automatic to surrender to Krishna. It is very difficult to surrender to anybody, because nobody is our true friend except Krishna.
That's true. But I just want to make one statement in that respect, Mataji. You're absolutely right. But Krishna says, okay, let me test you, right? My pure devotee, my representative, right? He's my representative. It's just like sometimes Prabhupada gives a very gross example. You know, let's test how surrendered you are to the government. The government representative comes, and how are you surrendering? So in one sense, actually, Krishna tests our surrender by how we are willing to surrender to his representative. And this is a whole big topic by itself, but it is said in many scriptures that the Guru is Krishna manifest in front of us. And the test of how ready we are to surrender to Krishna is tested by how ready we are to surrender to Guru. So I thought I'd make the point, but wonderful point you make, and it's such a powerful realization you have, Rupa Mataji. I pray that I can also have
Hare Krishna,
strong
Prabhu.
conviction. Hare Krishna.
In my experience and thinking, I think it's the opposite, really, because if you surrender, that's the most difficult things for the whole world, isn't it? To surrender unto Krishna. That's why we were in the place we were in. So I think perhaps it's once you surrender to Krishna, you actually is in a elevated state. So you're in a higher place, and we're striving to get there. I'm not sure if Mataji is already there, but I think it's a struggle to get there, to surrender.
Yes,
so that's my experience. That's my experience anyway.
Yeah, that's your experience, Mataji. And it's actually Krishna says, you know, your test of your surrender is how you surrender to Guru. Imagine if Krishna says, your surrender to me means you will do what I want, what pleases me, right? Yeah. And then Krishna tells you what pleases me most if you dedicate yourself truly and absolutely to the Guru, right? You share your love to Guru. And if we are not able to do that, that means we are not able to do that which really pleases Krishna. It's a wonderful topic. We can actually spend a whole session.
We can have another class for this. It's a big subject.
So beautiful.
And I think but a lot of the teachings point to us being, you know, shall I say, maybe not the word surrender, but your fellow men is just very important to follow their directions and their, well, not everybody's direction, but especially your elders, and you learn from their devotees and you get more improved, and then you next step is your Guru. So I mean, that's what I'm gathering anyway. I'm not sure if I'm right. I'm new to the field.
All right. we can discuss it as we move along. There's a lot more to discuss, and I think we'll cover that. Yes. Emma Mataji says, do we really understand the meaning of surrender? Are we only using that word?
Excellent. Yeah.
In many cases, Emma Mataji, that's very true. You know, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and it gets tested.
Yes, Prabhuji, little things happen and we immediately take control, and then we keep saying that we are surrendering. It's not easy to surrender, but our aspiration is to totally surrender to Krishna. Definitely.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Prabhuji, when I read Mataji's question, is that I was going through, this is just to inspire everyone, my own thing, that, you know, it's from Shastras, we can see it is Gyan and Vigyan. So it is Vigyan is what can be applied. And it happened when I was going through some problems with my eyes. This is a couple of years back, and Hema Mataji knows also because she suggested some really good remedies also, some acupuncture and the, what is it called? Points, pressure points and all that. And she really helped me out. But what I'm trying to say is that at that time I was so upset that, oh my goodness. And I was like, as Mataji said, do we really understand surrender? But when we do actually, it brings so much peace because we are not in control. I realized, of course, I had to see this doctor and consultant, everything had been done. But when we really surrender and think whatever Krishna does is for my best, and that's when I got this real peace. I mean, I'm not saying I was fully surrendered, but I tried in that sense that whatever is happening is with his wish. Jai Hari Kare Se Mamahitam, you know. We try to apply. I mean, yes, definitely when we apply, it brings a lot of peace. But I think to some degree, we all are applying, I'm sure, all this, whatever we are reading. Otherwise, it's a waste of.
Yeah. Someone said something very important once. Surrender is a process for most of us.
Prabhuji, isn't surrender when we are really helpless? Isn't that surrender when we are really helpless? We know it's nothing is in our control. That is so much. I mean, I'm thinking of surrender in a different way from my experience. Obviously, everybody has their own experience and perception. But when you are completely helpless, you are just like Prabhupada describes, like when you are in the middle of the ocean drowning, you are so helpless. There is no way you can, swim to the edge. There is no way somebody can lift you up. You are just helpless. And that's what surrender means to me when Krishna lifts you up. So that's what I'm saying, that when I was so helpless, Krishna lifted me up, and that's what surrender is for me. Because when there is nobody in the world, nothing helps you, Krishna helps.
That's true. So on that wonderful note, Rupa Mataji will conclude today's class. Thank you everyone for your attendance and your participation. It was wonderful being with you all. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanande,
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.